Hello and welcome to part 4 of the low poly character series. So far we've created the base model, prepared the UVs, and textured our character. Now we can start working on making a simple rig to prepare the character for animation. To keep things organized, let's make a new collection in the outliner and name it rig. Then we can hit Shift A in the viewport, go under armature, and select single bone. Then head over to the data properties panel, which looks like this green stick figure. And under viewport display, let's check in front. Now we should be able to see the bones through the model. And let's also check show names. Then we can go into edit mode and line this bone up to the bottom of the pelvis. Then we can select the end point, or the tail, and bring that up to the top of the pants. If we press E, we can extrude another bone from here. And let's bring this up to the base of the neck. To rename these bones, we can select them and press the F2 key. Let's rename our first bone to hips. And this one can be chest. Then we can extrude from the base of the neck to the start of the head, and extrude again all the way to the top of the head. Now that we have all the center bones finished, we can focus on the limbs. And we'll only have to worry about making one side, because we'll be able to symmetrize it. So we can select a bone and duplicate it by pressing Shift D like this, and create the shoulder bone. If we look closely, we can see a dotted line going from the starting point of the shoulder to the end point of the chest, which is good because that means the shoulder is parented to the chest. If we were to duplicate this again to make the upper arm, we wouldn't want it to be parented to the chest. So here's an edit into the future where I fix it. We should select the upper arm bone, then shift select the shoulder, press Ctrl P to parent, and select keep offset. Now that's how it should look, with the upper arm parented to the shoulder. Continuing on, let's extrude from the upper arm by pressing E to make the forearm. Then let's rename both of these bones by pressing the F2 key. Then let's extrude out again and name this one wrist. If we go into the top view, we can try to center the bones more with the arm. Let's also move this point for the elbow back a little bit. This will help indicate the direction we want the arm to bend. Now let's work on the fingers. We can duplicate this wrist bone if we want, but make sure that the base of the fingers are parented to the wrist bone and not the forearm. Continuing on, we can rename this to pinky and bring the endpoint to the knuckle, then extrude all the way to the tip. And let's go into the side view and adjust it. We can select this bone, right-click it, and subdivide it to add another joint. Then we can position the joint and subdivide again. And let's move all the joints towards the top of the finger. Let's select this entire finger by pressing L. Then in the top view, let's duplicate it by pressing Shift D and move it over. Let's select the pinky again and temporarily hide it. We can do that by pressing the H key, and if you want to show everything that's hidden, you can press Alt H. Now we can go into the side view and position the ring finger. It can get pretty tedious to rename all of these bones. Faster way to rename multiple things is to go up to Edit and select Batch Rename. Then we should change this from Objects to Bones. And we'll keep it on Find and Replace. So with the bones we want to be renamed selected, and tell it to find pinky and replace it with ring. Then hit OK. We're still left with all of these numbers on the end. But we can fix that later after we've made all of the fingers. Now let's duplicate the ring finger, position it, and rotate it to make the middle finger. Then we can select it, go up to Edit Batch Rename, and tell it to find ring and replace it with middle. And repeat everything again to make the index finger. And find and replace middle with index. And let's press Alt H to show everything that's hidden. We can also use the batch rename find and replace to delete all of these numbers. Just tell it to find .001 and replace it with nothing. And do it again for .002 and .003. Now let's duplicate the index finger and position it for the thumb. Then we can use batch rename to find index and replace it with thumb. Now let's start on the legs. We can duplicate this hip bone by pressing Shift D and rotate it the other way. If it has a weird tilt like this, we can press N to open up the transform panel and change the roll to 0. Now let's move this down and position the endpoint on the knee. Then extrude down again to the ankle, then to the ball of the foot, and again to the toes. Bring this knee joint to the front so there's a little bit of a bend. Then we can rename all of these bones. Let's make sure the thigh is parented to the hips. In order to symmetrize these bones to the right side, Blender needs an indication that these bones are on the left side. The easiest way to do that is to select them all, right-click, go under Names, and select Auto Name Left to Right. Then we can right-click them again and select Symmetrize. Now if we just wanted a simple rig just to pose the character, we could probably get away with just parenting the mesh to this. But if we want more control and want the character to do things like walk and run, then it's better to have an IK setup. So let's select the right side and delete it. That way we can just focus on the left side. and symmetrize it once it's done. Let's work on the IK for the legs first, and let's go into the side view. Grab this starting point of the foot and extrude back. We can rename this IK foot control. Then select it and press Alt-P, clear parent. Now it shouldn't have any dotted lines if we were to move it around. Let's also select the foot bone, shift select the foot control bone, press Ctrl-P, and keep offset. Now let's select the knee joint and extrude to the front. Then let's select the bone and rename it. Let's call it IK knee pole, and press Alt-P and clear parent. Then move it out in front of the leg. Now let's select the shin bone and start setting up the IK. We need to hold tab and go into pose mode. Then go to the bone constraints properties window, which should be this blue icon at the bottom. Then click add bone constraint, and under tracking look for inverse kinematics. For the target, we need to select the armature, and the bone needs to be the IK foot control. We can select the armature again for the pole target, and select the IK knee pole for the bone. Then change the chain length to 2. Now if we try moving the foot control in pose mode, we can see that the leg is bending the wrong way. To fix that, select the shin bone, and change the pole angle to -90. Now that we have an IK set up for the leg, let's work on the arm. So let's go into edit mode, and from the starting point of the wrist, we can extrude back to make the IK hand control. Let's select it and press Alt-P and clear parent. Then let's select the starting point of the forearm, extrude back. We can name this IK elbow pole. Then clear parent and move it back. Then let's select the IK hand control, go to the bone properties panel, which looks like this green bone icon, and uncheck deform, and do the same for the poles and the IK foot control. This is important to do before we bind the mesh to the skeleton, because we don't want the control and pole bones to have any weights over the mesh. Let's select the forearm and start setting up the IK. Go to the bone constraints panel and add the inverse kinematics. Select the armature for the target and the IK hand control for the bone. And for the pole target object, select the armature and the IK elbow pole for the bone. Then make the chain length 2, and so that it bends the right way, we need to change the pole angle to -90. If you're moving the bones around in pose mode to test things out and you want to reset them, you can press Alt-G to reset the position, and Alt-R to reset the rotation. Here I'm realizing I need to parent the base of the fingers to the wrist bone. We can also parent the wrist bone to the IK hand control. Then we'll be able to use it to move and rotate the hand. Now we should be finished with the IK setup. Let's take a look at the fingers. Go to the Object Data Properties panel, and check this box next to Axes. This will help to show us what direction the bones will rotate. Now if we select these finger bones, and change this transform pivot point at the top to individual origins, we can press RZZ to curl them in. But for the thumb, we'll need to fix the roll, so the direction of the curl is more natural. We can do that by going into edit mode, selecting one of the bones, and changing the roll in the transform panel. Now the curl should be more natural. Then let's select our control and pole bones, right-click auto name left-right. Then we can select all of the bones, right-click, and symmetrize them. Then let's select all of the geometry of our character, then shift-select the armature, and press Ctrl-P to parent with automatic weights. Then we should go into pose mode and test it out. And if you want to, you can change the display type from octahedral to stick. Then we can move and rotate these bones around to look for things we need to fix. And we can click this X in the upper right to enable pose mirroring. Let's also select the sword and the harness, then shift-select the armature, then press Ctrl-P and parent it with automatic weights. Now we can see that the sword and the harness are being deformed by multiple bones. To fix that, let's hold tab and go into weight paint mode. Then let's click this drop-down at the very top, and look for the chest. Then let's go over to weights, and select set weight or press Ctrl-X. Now the sword should be completely red, but we can see it's still crooked. To fix that, let's go under weights again, and select normalize or normalize all. This will ensure that the weights will equal 1. Then let's do the same thing for the harness. Now let's take a look at the body. Go into weight paint mode, and we can select the chest vertex group. Using the brush, let's give it more weights to prevent it from squeezing in from the arms. Let's test out the fingers, and luckily they don't look too bad. Let's try to create a standing pose for the character. And at this point I realized the upper arm should be parented to the shoulder. Now if we want, we can keyframe some of these bones to create an idle animation. Let's select the shoulder and press K. Then we can insert a keyframe on the location and rotation. In the timeline, let's copy the keyframe, then move to frame 48 and paste it. Then let's move to frame 24, change the transform orientation to local, and move the shoulder up slightly. Then we can add a keyframe. Now let's select the other shoulder, then add a keyframe on frame 0 and frame 48. Go to frame 24, then select this shoulder and press Ctrl-C to copy its pose. Select the left shoulder and right-click it, and select Paste X Flipped Pose, or press Shift-Ctrl-V. Then we can press K and insert a keyframe. If we press play, we should have a loop where the shoulders are moving up and down. But it's looking pretty robotic, so let's open up the graph editor. Select all of the keyframes, and press T to change the interpolation. Then we can select Bezier to give it some easing. Let's also select the IK hand controls and add some keyframes. And we can add a subtle rotation to the head. Don't forget to add some easing. And there we have the start of a basic idle animation. I hope this series was useful for you. It was a new kind of challenge for me to put together, and I really enjoyed making it. So if you found it useful, please leave a like, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, let me know in the comments.